a moment. He looked at her again and watched her reaction. Arnie just blinked her eyes in confusion. Then His Highness brought the young girl's hand close to his lips, and hot lips touched Arna's tender skin. Goosebumps ran over the girl's skin. He quietly said that it was too late to run. On that day, the Ternugin castle was full of commotion and excessive running around. From the very early morning, the maids ran around all floors without squatting, trying to do everything by a certain time. And there was only one good reason for this. The owner of the castle was getting married today. The tearful nanny could not control her emotions and insisted that Lady Arna was as beautiful as ever today. The nanny was upset that the Duchess did not see how grown-up and beautiful her daughter was now. But Arna reassured the nanny and said that she spoke of the Duchess as if she had given her soul to God. Suddenly, a mother's voice was heard, saying that it was a pity that she could not personally be present at her daughter's wedding. Arna looked at the magic sphere and said that she still sees everything. Arna with her, and her uncle had personally arrived in the Northern Empire to attend the ceremony. Arna almost stopped breathing after such a statement. She was simply shocked by such attention from her relatives and wondered how she would have to deal with all the consequences after the divorce. But while disturbing thoughts were raging in the young girl's head, the maids had already finished decorating the bride and were the last to put the veil on her face. The maid's voice was heard that everything was ready, and in a few minutes, the beautifully dressed bride was already ready for marriage. All the maids couldn't be more pleased with how incredibly beautiful Arna was. The young girl went to the mirror and examined herself from head to toe. She was not in a festive mood, but the maids encouraged her with their compliments and joyful cries. The young girl closed her eyes and thought that she could not believe that she would have to go through all this, although in fact she did not even want to marry without love. The joyful nanny brought a magic sphere to Arnie, and the girl saw her mother there. The Duchess said that her beautiful daughter shines like a star in the sky in her wedding dress. The happy Duchess smiled and said that she congratulated her daughter on the birth of a new family. There were tears of joy in her eyes, and Arna had never seen her mother so happy in her life. The young girl also tried to smile back, so as not to upset her mother, and thanked her for the greeting. She reassured herself that at least her mother would be happy. A lot of people gathered in the wedding hall. They were invited here from different parts of the country, who were very interested in who could conquer the heart of their duke. Only the duke's assistant, who was watching this process from the upper floor, thought intensely why this wedding was happening so unexpectedly. The assistant saw everyone present discussing the wedding. They asked each other what Circassian's chosen bride imagined herself to be. And didn't the duke fall in love with this girl at first sight? There was only one question in the man's mind. What was his duke even thinking about when he proposed marriage to Lady Arna? After all, this marriage now fell like snow on their heads. A loud announcement was made in the hall for everyone to congratulate the bride and groom. The door to the hall opened solemnly, and a young couple entered the hall holding hands. They were incredibly beautiful. There was a whisper in the hall that the bride was a true beauty, and that now it was clear why their duke had lost his head. All the way to the altar, Arna thought only of whether she was doing the right thing. The young man kept his eyes on his bride. He understood what was going on in her heart now, so he decided not to bother her with unnecessary chatter. When the young couple was in front of the altar, the priest announced that first of all he wanted to thank on behalf of the newlyweds all the guests who attended this solemn event today. Then the priest seriously asked the bride if she swears that she will always love the groom in sorrow and joy, in wealth and poverty, in sickness and in health. Lady Arn glanced at the priest with a frightened look. She could not yet realize that right now her free life was ending, and what this terrible word, forever, meant. The young girl lowered her head and hesitated to answer. She began to wonder if it was okay to make a false oath before the altar. But she had no other choice, and she quietly said that she swears. The priest then asked the groom the same. Without a moment's hesitation, Cassian said clearly that he swears. He was pleased that Arnie also answered this question in the affirmative. As soon as the bride and groom confirmed their union with their consent, the priest said that after that they should seal their vows with a kiss. The young girl looked fearfully at the priest, and then at her husband. She had no idea that she would have to kiss a stranger in front of everyone present. But His Highness was not confused. He approached the young girl and carefully lifted the veil. Then he looked into her eyes, full of fear. His hand gently took her chin, His Highness quietly told his bride that if she wanted to escape, this was her last chance. But Arna looked at him sternly and said that he himself recently said that it was too late to run away. His blue eyes looked straight into her soul. He gently whispered that of course it was too late to run away. Then suddenly, his other hand wrapped around her waist and pulled her closer to him with a light movement. Arna's heart beat faster. She closed her eyes. After a few seconds, she felt his hot lips touching hers. She didn't know how to describe her feelings, but they certainly weren't disgusting. Everyone present in the hall began to applaud and joyfully congratulate the newlyweds on the birth of their new family. After the kiss, Arna's face was covered with red paint. The priest joyfully announced that from this moment on he was declaring Sir Cassian, Duke of Ternugan, and Lady Arna husband and wife. Arnie's husband looked at his wife with satisfaction. A gentle smile appeared on his face. The young girl could not realize that all this was happening to her in reality. All the guests had fun for a long time and drank alcoholic beverages in honor of the husband and wife. The maids escorted the wife herself to her room. They told her that she needed to rest. The maids tired Arn very much because of their moderate care. They said she might fall because she had been out in high heels all evening. But Arn said in her mind that she would handle everything herself. When the dear young girl remembered her own wedding, the episode with their kiss immediately appeared in her head. This was the highlight of tonight's episode. Immediately after the memories, a blush appeared on her face again. She glanced out of the corner of her eye to see if the maids noticed, for she was not used to showing her weak points to strangers. Arnie was angry with herself for even thinking about that cursed kiss. She told herself to just forget about the kiss once and for all. After a few minutes, the young girl and the maids found themselves in front of the door to a room. The maids announced that they had come to the Duke's chambers. When Arna was inside and looked around, she thought that the room looked even better than she could have imagined. She immediately turned her attention to the large bed in the middle of the room. The young wife immediately fell on the bed. Today was an extremely stressful and difficult day, and her only desire at the moment was just to rest. She immediately began to wonder what was going on. Everything was like a dream for her. Arna could not understand whether she had done the right thing and whether she would not regret it in the future. She was brought back to reality by the maids closing the bedroom door and giggling merrily. They wished the young wife a good wedding night. In Arna's head, their words simply repeated themselves as terribly as possible. It finally dawned on her what exactly they meant. And it looks like one kiss won't end today. The young wife immediately decided that she could not just sit here like that, because she did not want to become known to everyone as a wife who killed her own husband on their first wedding night. At that moment, the only right decision for Arna seemed to be escape. She resolutely went to the window and opened it. The young girl surveyed the area and assessed how exactly she would need to go down. Arna decided that this was her way to retreat, and there was no more time to delay the decision. But just as Arna decided to take her first step towards escape, her husband's displeased voice was heard from behind. He sternly asked what she was doing there. Arna turned her head and looked into her husband's blue eyes. Here it was clear even to a dull person that his look did not predict anything good. The young wife was confused and did not know what to do, whether to quickly jump out of the window or to come up with something again and stay in her husband's bedroom. But it was only known that she was caught again. The young man saw that his wife hesitated and could not think of what to say to him. Therefore, he did not hesitate to repeat his question. Arna, standing on the windowsill of his bedroom, continued to decide what she should do. She had two options, either cut him down immediately or tell him the whole truth. Cassian repeated what she was going to do. Arna still decided to say that she just decided to get some fresh air, so she moved closer to the window. But her explanation did not look very convincing. Therefore, Cassian asked why she decided to breathe fresh air precisely on the windowsill and in the middle of the night. The young wife again began to mumble something that was not very clear, and Cassian asked if she was going to end her own life right now. Such a young girl could not even think. She looked at her husband and thought, what is he doing at all, and how did such a thing even come into his head? Arnie clearly answered that she was not going to do that at all. In her mind, she even wondered if it was possible to die by jumping from here. Cassian looked at his wife and decided not to continue this conversation, so as not to scare the girl, and she did not decide to do something else for the night watching. Arnie also decided to leave this little misunderstanding alone. After all, she couldn't tell him frankly that she was going to run away from him on their wedding night. His Highness cautiously began to approach his wife. He quietly took one step at a time, trying not to scare her even more. When he came almost close to her, he held out his hand to her. Arna looked at her and hesitated whether she should respond in kind or leave things as they were. But after thinking a little, she still decided to extend her hand to him. As soon as he took her hand, he carefully took the young wife from the windowsill. When Arna was right next to Cassian, he gently told her to never neglect her safety again. She silently looked into his eyes and only shook her head. She chaotically tried to think of what to do now. And nothing came to mind, except that I would have to spend the night with him. One thing she knew for sure was that if she had to do it today, then she would definitely become the wife who killed her husband on their first wedding night. Cassian's mind immediately had a picture of her nanny warning him to treat Lady Arna like a crystal because she was too weak. Even then, His Highness understood that he should be as careful as possible with his wife, but he did not think that her relatives had driven her to the point of suicide. When he looked into her eyes, Arna still hesitated as to what to do to her. She simply said that she was in such a stupid situation and thought that it was not too late to cut him down. He was silent for a while, carefully choosing the necessary words, and then turned to his wife. She looked fearfully at the young man. Then His Highness suddenly took his wife in his arms and carried her somewhere. He kept his eyes on his wife, and she also looked into his blue eyes. A blush appeared on Arna's cheeks from the very thoughts of what might happen when he brought her to bed. She didn't want to spend the night with a man she didn't even know. When Arna was in bed, her husband gently covered her with a blanket, while she curled up, imagining what they would have to do now, and her heart almost stopped from those thoughts. She was waiting for her husband to start molesting her and did not know how she would be able to endure it. But when she opened her eyes, she saw Cassian standing next to her and said that she was very tired today. Confused, Arna looked at him with wide eyes and could not believe her ears. She asked herself whether it was possible to just sleep on the first wedding night. The young man leaned closer to his wife and whispered to her not to worry about anything, but to just close her eyes and get a good night's sleep. Cassian then turned and walked out of the bedroom. When Arn heard the door close, she was able to relax and breathe freely. Now was the time to reflect on everything that happened today. When she found herself alone with her thoughts, she thought that now everything was exactly as she wanted it to be. But it is somewhat strange that His Highness behaves with Arna as if with a child. For aristocrats, marriage was a common thing, a kind of simple tool, a union that pursued only one goal: family well-being. Therefore, everyone thought that this is exactly how the marriage of the Duke of Ternugensky is. She washed the bones of both the bride and the groom long before the ceremony itself. It was like this until everyone saw the young couple at the wedding. It was then that everyone noticed how His Highness looked at his wife and kept their eyes on the young couple, trying not to miss a single detail. But the absence of the young wife at half of the banquet, as well as the extraordinary care of the maids for the young wife, gave rise to too many rumors about the young girl herself. Even at the banquet, the guests began to whisper that missing their own wedding was too much. And it is very suspicious that the dukes are so protective of their new wife. The men quietly whispered the story that His Highness had personally chased away the men who spoke ill of the Duchess of Arna. Another asked in surprise whether it was true that His Highness had fallen in love at first sight. Rumors and misunderstanding of what was happening only grew. The new morning began when the young wife again climbed into her favorite tree and fell asleep there. She was not used to luxurious duvets, so she was much more comfortable here. Her husband watched her from his office. He could not fall in love with his beauty. But the thoughts of why she is doing this did not leave him. His assistant Alain entered the office. He also watched how his master couldn't take his eyes off his wife and thought, maybe all this talk about love at first sight is real. Cassian suddenly returned and told the aide that he had one question. He happily said that he would help if it was within his competence. But the question of His Highness simply knocked the ground out from under Alain's feet. He asked what it could mean if the wife wanted to commit suicide on the first wedding night. Alain thought a little and said that he did not quite understand, but could it not mean that a young girl does not want to be ringed to death? And Cassian replied that surely Alain was right. The assistant felt uncomfortable after such frank conversations, so he decided to change the conversation to another topic and announced that he almost forgot something important. Alain took some official letter from his pocket and said that yesterday the second prince had asked him to give the Duke an invitation. Cassian took the letter and asked Alain if Mackenzie had given him the letter and left immediately. And Alain confirmed that this was exactly the case. Alain asked the Duke when he planned to meet the Emperor. Cassian himself began to unfold the letter because he was very interested in what was so urgent about it. After reading the contents of the letter, Cassian placed it on the table and told the assistant that this meeting would take place very soon. Arnie and his nanny had breakfast outdoors. Sipping delicious tea, the young girl decided to contact her mother with the help of a magic sphere. Or rather, it was the latter's initiative. When the image of the Duchess appeared in the sphere, she had a mysterious smile on her face. She was silent for a long time because she did not know how to ask her daughter a delicate question. Arna directly if she liked the first wedding night? This question made Arna spit out all the tea in her mouth. You can't argue with the Duchess's tact. The Duchess saw her daughter's reaction and just laughed. Then the mother added that her daughter must have liked everything. Arna herself thought that she would smash that damn sphere to hell. Then the Duchess reported that there were rumors that her subordinates were thinking of mutiny. The Knights of the Golden Order went on strike so that Lady Arna could return to her homeland. This news greatly disturbed the young girl. She thought about her knights and repeated the word strike. The Duchess confirmed that this is exactly what is happening. The mother also added that she had lost contact with some of the knights. She wanted to notify Arne earlier, but she did not get in touch. So the Emperor also began to worry about this. An upset Arne told her mother that if she didn't get in touch, it was necessary to tell everything to Sarno. But the mother said that the daughter herself said that she had not even seen him. Arna began to make excuses that she simply had a lot to do. Although in fact she was just in a bad mood, she was ashamed to even say such a thing, so she decided to lie a little. Arne's mood was already completely spoiled. She quickly put the cup of tea on the table and began to think about the strike that her knights had arranged. The young girl already imagined the chatter of her knights, who discussed her marriage and candidates for this position. If they fell into her hands now, then surely none of them would be spared. The conversation and thoughts of the young girl were distracted by the maid, who called her mistress. Arna turned her head and looked at what exactly she was called. The maid pointed to a whole pile of boxes and said that His Highness had sent her these gifts. The mother from the field said that it was very romantic and Arna should definitely like it. But the young girl had her own explanation for such an act. Probably he really thought that she wanted to commit suicide. But while examining the boxes with gifts, Arna's gaze stopped at the green areas. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was hiding there. When she looked more closely, she really noticed a male figure there. And besides, she was very familiar to her. A minute later, a young man came out of the bushes and smiled happily at Arna. She only had time to think what kind of old man he had forgotten here. Arna was ready to kill this idiot immediately.
Like this video. Hit the like button and subscribe for more videos.